Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. The jury had reached a verdict. Where the hell was Johnny Depp? That they just want to go back to their lives. Amber Heard was lying. Kind of what's the next step here? Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel, Attorneybrooke. So I wanted to rush home and get in my comfies and wash off my makeup and talk to you guys fairly quickly about what is all over the headlines right now, which is the Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard verdict that has now been read to obviously the courtroom, the parties, the counsel, as well as all of us here in the outskirts of it. So I just kind of wanted to hop on and give some commentary, and it was definitely interesting. I think I'm throwing on a little Peter Thomas Roth rose mask while we chat, but this has been a long-awaited verdict through what has seemed like a very rigorous, very intense trial that has been publicized pretty much 24/7 to the fullest extent to anyone that has pretty much access to the internet. So yeah, it's been long-awaited, and it's been long-awaited especially for both parties, as these allegations have been flying for several years. So it wasn't only the trial that these folks have been having to kind of deal with everything. It's years in the making. So I was actually at work today around 2 p.m. my time when the verdict came out, and there were a lot of things to unravel. I was actually holed away in one of my coworkers' offices, and we were all sitting there chatting and like kind of waiting, and so it was kind of fun. So just to kind of jump into it, when we got the announcement, the jury had reached a verdict. It hadn't been read yet. Typically at that point, which is kind of what happened in this situation, the judge kind of gives until the top of the next hour for everyone to return to the courthouse, where the jury will then read off its verdict aloud. So a couple of things to touch base on that were a bit abnormal, or not as normal as you would typically see when a verdict is read out loud, is number one, where the hell was Johnny Depp? So I know the media outlets touched on this. As we all know, I believe he was in the UK at the time, overseas, I think performing in his band over there. Honestly, don't know, don't quote me on that. But I know he was overseas, and the big question was, knowing that he's not gonna be physically present in the courtroom, is he gonna like FaceTime live in or like video chat in so that the public at large could see his reaction to the verdict? So there's nothing in a civil world that requires the parties to be present for the verdict. And also it just kind of seems like it would have been I don't know, maybe just a bit odd, or kind of like, for lack of better words, like disrespectful for him to necessarily take the time and energy and effort to video in just to kind of see what his reaction might be, because that's all that would have became at that point had he chose to like live stream in. So he didn't have to be there. There's definitely the side of the public opinion that I'm seeing that thinks it was slightly rude, or maybe, yeah, just kind of disrespectful of him not to be present at the jury verdict, only because this is of the Virginia taxpayers' time and resources and money to have gone through this multiple month trial, for the jurors to obviously have halted their entire life to serve on that juror panel, and then for him not to be there for that final reading is a bit of a slight to the overall system. But I think we can kind of give him a free pass. He's Johnny Depp, and he obviously had to go play in his band overseas. But beyond that, that's where Johnny Depp was. And the second odd thing that struck me, obviously, was when the judge came in, the jurors were brought out to the courtroom, and then prior to proceeding with the official jury verdict and the reading of it, the judge called a sidebar of the attorneys to approach the bench and speak with her. So as we've all seen on the live streaming, that gets muted out for us, the public, so we can't actually hear what's going on. But a blip that we were able to hear was that a portion of the jury instruction had not been filled out by the jurors. That portion of the jury instruction was there was some portion involving compensatory damages that had been left blank. And so we had heard the judge indicate that at least $1 worth of compensatory damages had to be assigned. So that, we were all kind of taken aback, like, wait, what? Like the technicalities of that. Most of us, don't understand. I've never really heard about that before. So we were like, what the heck? We thought we were going to get a verdict and now this. And I personally have not seen that happen before, but I'm sure it has. So from my perspective and from what I know from being inside a courtroom, that is definitely not the norm to see that type of mistake happen. So at that point, then the media is kind of questioning, well, did the attorneys see the liability portion of it? Did they get to see any of the other damages that might have been awarded? We don't know. There was a lot of speculation trying to read the facial cues of the counsel and of Amber Heard to see if maybe we could get an edge up on what that actual verdict was going to be. But nonetheless, the jury was dismissed to go back and complete that jury instruction form before they could come in and actually deliver that verdict. So I've been throwing around the term of like a jury instruction, a jury charge. So in a jury trial, when your case and your evidence is being presented in front of the jury itself in order for the jury to make those findings of fact and assign some sort of liability, they're given what is called a jury instruction. So in my opinion, the jury instruction in this type of jury trial scenario is one of the most important, if not the most important legal document of that jury trial. Because whatever is written in that jury instruction as to the liability, as to whether or not the elements of a specific statute have been met or a specific claim, as you saw in the reading of the jury verdict, the foreman of the jury was reading off word for word verbatim what was typed out in that jury instruction. So that's the packet they were given. Did Johnny Depp prove by clear and convincing evidence all of the elements required of defamation? Yes. So if your jury instruction is wrong, then you're fucked. And that can be a huge mistake in which counselors give an improper jury instruction or something that's incorrect within it. It can affect liability. And if liability is actually found in your client's favor, then if your damages aren't actually typed out correctly in the proper questioning and structure of how that needs to be answered, you can pretty much fuck yourself or your client out of some serious damages. So that jury instruction is like the holy grail of legal documents. That's that one piece of paper that the jury actually gets to make their decision, and it is absolutely pertinent to a jury trial case. So I was shocked as an attorney when it came back and it wasn't even completed correctly. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What do they do? Like, is this some sort of misconduct? Like, what's going on? So I was kind of freaking out, but it was very entertaining to say the least. And so it looks like it just took a few minutes or so for the jury to go back, actually fill in that section of the damages, and then read the verdict. So jumping to the verdict, which is what we have all heard so far, we're seeing a lot of headlines that say Johnny Depp won the defamation trial, 15 million damages against Amber Heard, which, let's break it down a bit. A kind of a brief, big picture explanation of it is that we know that Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for defamation or defamatory statements made in regard to the op-ed that was published by the Washington Post in which she made the allegations of sexual abuse, physical abuse, and such, and in that regard. But then we also have the claim or the cross claim of Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp, in which she sued him as well for defamatory statements that had allegedly been made by Johnny Depp. So I saw a lot of questions flying about, wait, how did they both get, awarded damages against it? Like, I don't get it. And that's because there were actually two lawsuits that were live, one asserted against the other by the other. And so with that, the jury verdict, the main kind of crux of it was that Amber Heard committed defamation on every count in which she was sued for. And that is what the jury ruled. And with that, the damages that were accompanied along with that have been awarded to Johnny Depp were 10 million in compensatory damages and 5 million in punitive damages. So a breakdown of what those damages mean in general is compensatory is what it sounds like. They are damages that are in place to compensate the victim of whatever had, or in this case, Johnny Depp, for the defamatory statements made by Amber Heard. So how the jury actually came to that $10 million number, we're not specifically, as the public, we're not really gonna know how they reached that $10 million number. It could be based on like how much he spent in his divorce against her and trying to help him recoup some of those fees, or helping recoup some of the settlement that he had to pay out out to her in that divorce, or even potentially some of the earnings he had lost due to the defamatory statements. So that's where that type of analysis comes into play, and that's why you saw a lot of testimony and evidence being presented about loss of wages and loss of opportunity with their movies and this and that, because that was the attempt of both parties to prove up the damages that both had received due to the defamatory statements. On the other hand, you have punitive damages. So punitive damages are damages kind of on top of compensatory damages that are meant to serve as a punishment to that person. And when you heard in the jury verdict that they found that Amber Heard had made these defamatory statements with malice, essentially that she intentionally made these statements knowing that they were wrong or that they were going to cause that sort of reputational damage to Johnny Depp. So they found that she had acted with malice, and because of that they were able to award the $5 million in punitive damages as well. And then there was a bit during that jury verdict reading when we heard at the end that there was a statutory cap on punitive damages. So in Virginia, this is a civil state case heard in the state of Virginia. It's specific to what their statutes read regarding that specific civil matter. So in Virginia, punitive damages are capped at $350,000, but that specific $350,000 cap was not to be read or known to the jury prior to them awarding damages. So that's why you saw the high $5 million in punitive damages, but then the judge had to go in, implement that statute in which those $5 million damages will now become the $350,000 damages. So at the end of the day, if you do the math, it's $10,350,000 in damages that were awarded to Johnny Depp. And then on the other hand, we have not alleged, the jury has now decided, and the court has made its ruling that Johnny Depp or his agent, his previous attorney, acting on behalf of Johnny Depp, did make the defamatory statements when I believe it was when he published the statements regarding the incident at the home being a hoax, and that it was after the cops had initially left the home after Amber Heard had made an outcry regarding a physical attack, that her and they had found nothing, that Amber Heard and her friends conspired and roughed up the house and spilt wine and then called the cops back to make it look like Johnny had done something. So there was a statement made of some sort of that nature by Johnny Depp's previous attorney. The jury had found that those statements were indeed defamatory. So the damages that were awarded to Amber Heard for that was the $2 million. So that's why you see that damages were awarded to both and liability was also assigned to both. But the overarching, I think, public consensus here is that Johnny Depp did win because we saw that the damages awarded to him far outweigh the damages awarded to Amber Heard. And I think the overarching public opinion was that Amber Heard was lying in some way, shape, or form, and that this was Johnny Depp's opportunity to remedy his reputation that he had been dealing with the damages of for several years now, and to really restore his, the public's faith in him as Johnny Depp. So that's kind of a brief breakdown of what that verdict actually meant and how those damages were assigned. So then we kind of jump into the next, I think, elephant in the room is kind of what's the next step here? Do they actually have to write checks to each other and pay it out? Does one party want to appeal the trial court's decision? So in general, no matter what state you're in, we always have our right to appeal and the appellate court remedies beyond what a trial court decides regarding a case. So the next step, if either party was unhappy about that ruling or the outcome of that case, then they can go and file an appeal, and it takes it to that next level of review in the state's court system. But to go to the appellate level, it's not a redo. Well, it depends. But if we go to the appellate level, that appeal is actually accepted to be heard by Virginia's appellate court system, then there have to be specific grounds in order for either party to appeal. And those grounds are going to be limited. It's based off of generally some sort of abuse of discretion or misconduct by the underlying trial judge who overheard the trial proceeding, which most of us tuned into a lot of it. My professional opinion is that she handled and conducted the trial so well that I don't know that there's a lot there that is appealable as to an abuse of discretion of the judge's decision making at that trial level. So that could be appealing maybe evidence that was let in by the judge that a party feels like shouldn't have been let in, or something of that nature is like the type of thing you would appeal that could then affect the ruling that was made. A big overarching thing that you would typically see at an appellate level is either party appealing the amount of damages that were awarded. Here, when you throw around the word millions, that is a lot of money, but I think that the damages were fair and fairly assigned in this situation, especially like if you think about the $2 million that was awarded to Amber Heard. There was a lot of testimony about the type of income that she had earned or was expecting to earn based off of her role in Aquaman. That was the $1 to $2 million range. So the $2 million in damages seems like it pretty much aligns with the amount of damages we should have been talking about to begin with. So when you see that type of appeal and deciding to appeal, it can be off of some error that was made at the trial level, some evidentiary error, the amount of damages that either party is being ordered to pay to the other, or the biggie would be some sort of juror misconduct. So that could be literally a juror conspiring outside of kind of the boundaries of in which they were supposed to be operating during trial. They were reaching out to other people. They were getting outside sources. They were, being bribed or buddy or teaming up with one of the counselors, something like that. Things that you would kind of see on TV, that would be a basis for appeal. So you have to have a specific grounds to appeal in general. And then the next overarching question is, do you think Johnny Depp or Amber Heard will actually exercise their right to appeal? My inclination is no, that we're not going to see an appeal filed. I think number one, because both are probably exhausted of going through this process. Like I said at the beginning, this is something that has been ongoing for several years, just beyond the preparation and the trial itself. And I think both parties are just exhausted. Both parties have been absolutely demolished and humiliated, and all skeletons have been aired out to the public eye, and I'm sure that's not something that they want to keep going and doing for further and further. The appellate process can take years, just as the trial level can. So I think no, just based on the sole fact that they don't want to go through this again and keep reliving it. I think we heard in testimony from both parties that they just want to go back to their lives. They want this to be done. So I wouldn't suspect either to want to file an appeal just for the sake of doing it. Another reason I don't think that we would see an appeal from Johnny Depp, obviously because the verdict was wholly and largely in his favor, is just because his intent with going through the trial to begin with, knowing that it was going to be published to the public eye, is that he really wanted to do this to cure his reputation and to really get to tell his narrative and his side of the truth and put on his evidence as to the allegations that Amber Heard was making that caused a lot of damage to his reputation. And I think this trial gave him the opportunity to do that. And I would say so based off of the general public opinion's reaction throughout this entire trial. It's been very Team Johnny. Amber Heard has faced a lot of backlash, a lot of threats to her own child, things that no human should ever have to endure. But because it was put in the public light, I do think that in some way, shape, or form was a goal of Johnny Depp to be able to tell his side of the story. So I don't think he really would have a reason to appeal. He's always stated from day one that it's just not about the money for him. So yeah, I think either party, depending on grounds for appeal, certainly has the right to. And a lot of times in these high profile cases, you'll know pretty soon if an appeal is going to actually be filed and pursued, because a lot of times these types of attorneys and legal teams are going to have a pretty solid draft of an appeal already in the works, ready to be fired off, especially when they know that trials expectedly from the beginning not going to go their way, or some, disastrous thing occurred during trial where they know they're already going to have to kind of beef up and be ready for an appeal. So that can generally happen pretty quickly. So I think we'll know as the public fairly soon if that's going to happen. But I think in general, the hype of this verdict is what most people are going to tag onto, and then it's probably going to die down hereafter in a sense of like really following up with all the legal ins and outs and the technicalities of what's going to happen after it. Now, another question that I've seen kind of running around is Amber actually going to have to pay that money to Johnny? So the big answer is yes. The overarching answer is yes. She would have to. It's going to be damages that are paid to him, to Johnny Depp. It's going to be a judgment in his favor and against Amber Heard. She can just sit on it and not pay it and not pay it. And there's really nothing that's going to happen unless, in general, Johnny Depp wants to enforce that judgment against against her. And that's when she'll start dealing with liens being placed on her property, depending on Virginia laws, wages being garnished, things like that. This judgment, if Johnny Depp wants it to, can haunt Amber Heard pretty much for the rest of her life if he wanted it to. I don't think that that's Johnny Depp's intent. I think, knowing the general net worth of Johnny Depp, it's truly not about the money for him. I think it was more about saving his reputation. Another kind of set of questions I saw flying around right after the verdict was read was regarding Amber Heard's son's statements that were made regarding Johnny Depp, that he was a wife beater, it was something of some sort, and that courts overseas, I believe in the UK, had heard a similar type of defamation case in which Amber Heard's son was sued by Johnny Depp there, and that the case was not found in favor of Johnny Depp, that he did not win the case over there. So the question here that I see a lot is, does Johnny Depp's son have to issue some sort of retraction or apology? Because now that we found that the defamatory statements, or the statements made by Amber Heard, were in fact defamatory, should her son have to retract things that had occurred then in his previous statements? The overarching answer is no. I would assume, and I'm almost 100% positive, that the defamation laws in Virginia versus the local defamation laws there in the country or the state or wherever it was that Johnny Depp sued her son are completely different. There's going to be different legal standards. There's going to be different interpretation of those laws. There's going to be different elements that have to be met. And so just because Johnny Depp lost there does not make this win any more or less, and does not make that loss over there any more or less. It simply means that there were two different laws that encompassed the basis of the case in which he chose to sue. So those are two completely different things, and no, the son is not going to be required to issue some sort of statement. They're not allowed to reopen that case based off this verdict here. They are two separate issues in and of themselves. So in my opinion, I think one of the biggest takeaways here is obviously survivors of domestic abuse or physical abuse within a family. This definitely sheds light on that overarching issue. I think you see Amber Heard's side in the statement that she issued directly after the verdict, saying that this is another step back for women in general in this country. It was almost like, in paraphrasing, a slap to the Me Too movement, and that this is, again, this verdict is going to deter women from making outcries or coming forward in instances of domestic abuse, because Amber Heard chose to stand up for herself, and look what happened. So I think that is also a big basis of some of the issues that are discussed in the Me Too movement, and women feeling deterred from actually coming forward and seeking help in those types of situations. Versus we have another set of opinions that are more like Team Johnny Depp, where this is a big win in general for survivors of domestic violence, because you can see, no matter your history of drug abuse or alcohol abuse, or even kind of, I say violent, but for lack of better words, violent like outbursts or just disruptions and kind of your natural personality, regardless of those traits that you have or your past, that still doesn't mean that you deserve to have to be a victim of domestic violence, that you still can come forward. And despite your underlying traits, despite being a male, despite being a rich, successful male, that those things are still not okay, and you shouldn't have to endure those things. So I do, on the other end of the scale, see how this is a big win for males, and also all other survivors of domestic violence. Wherever you kind of fall into any sort of labeling or category, it can be a big win for you, because no matter what it is that you've gone through before, no matter how you're perceived in the public eye, you still have a fighting chance. You can still come forward, and you can still essentially have your day in court or have your story heard. And that it's not, with majority of statistics, we see that a lot of domestic abuse that is known to us is male on female type violence. And in this situation, it looks like the jury agreed that a lot of this could have been female on male violence. So this can be a big win for men in general. With that said, I think knowing those things, whether you're a male, whether you're a female, whether you are the abuser or the abusee in a situation, I think a big takeaway here that also I think has a lot to do with what we're seeing in this generation of cancel culture is like, let's all take a beat. Let's all breathe. Let's all take the facts that are known, but also let's take time to really develop and derive all the facts we need from both sides before we make an educated opinion or decision based on someone's worthiness to be canceled or not. I think that is a big indication of what was done to Johnny Depp in this situation. As soon as the op-ed came out, as soon as the allegations were made, his reputation was tarnished. He lost his roles. We all know what happened to him. And now at the end of the day, it's taken years for him to actually see justice in this situation where cancel culture immediately wanted to cancel him. Disney immediately canceled him without really knowing the ins and outs of what happened. So I am not a huge fan of cancel culture. I truly believe in hearing all evidence, all facts, all sides of the story, and making an educated decision on my own volition without really being swayed by like the public at large or based off of what a headline says. So I think that's a huge takeaway from today's verdict. I think this is also a win for all survivors of domestic violence. That's about it. I know I kind of spouted off a lot, but I wanted to get this to you guys and get you my thoughts. And I'm gonna sign out from here. So if you like this and you want more legal analysis from me, cheers to that and hit that subscribe button. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.